I wish I was a butterfly.
Okay. Hey guys. Welcome to my Zoom-Mime class. Got a couple new things today. If you've been looking at any of my other classes, definitely have some different setups today. You might notice that I've got two cameras over here and over there. Things are improving all the time. But if anything's going haywire, just let me know. I can shut down and go normal. But anyway, we'll see how that works. All the adventures of live streaming. Welcome. My name is Jonathan Lowry. I am a professional performer, actor, director, specializing in movement. Most of my original training was in mime and classical theater. I've done a lot of dance. I worked with an international performing art physical theater ensemble in the performing arts for 10 years. And I would like to share with you in this class some of the things that I've learned during this crazy pandemic time and performing online. I've been involved in several sort of products, experiments in the arts as this pandemic has gone on and the shutdowns and social distancing and all that good stuff. And I have found a lot of fun that can be had inside this Brady Bunch window that we all live in right now. And given that this is kind of where theater is going to need to live for at least a few more months, I thought I would share some of the things that I've learned, some of the things that I've discovered. All of this is obviously very new and very much oriented towards live performing in a screen. I will say straight up, I have some experience in film, very little behind the camera. So this is more about the live streaming experience rather than a film experience. So this is taking things like, okay, I have a Zoom play reading, or I've come up with some other variation of that where it's me video calling in to be a part of a production. And some of the options that you have in this window that you may not think about, or that we're going to apply in different ways. So that's what this class is all about. Before I go any further, I'm just going to say publicly here that I am monitoring chat. You could probably see this on the big screen, but not this one. I have a laptop over here with the chat windows and all that good stuff, and I can switch back and forth between cameras if you need a bigger view of my body over here. Explaining a little bit more, this is meant to be your Zoom window. This is so you can see what the crap is going on when I'm out of screen. See, I'm in this screen, but not in, yeah, okay, you guys can see. Okay, and yeah. So, let's get going. I'm refer to my notes. Yeah, so I've been involved in a couple of productions where I've applied a couple different things. I've kind of researched and played with this. One of my other jobs is creating videos for a gym for online connection with members. Sorry, I'm looking at that camera, not this one. That's my gym camera. Okay, so I've been doing video production for the past few months and figuring all this kind of cool stuff out. So, mime. Why did I call this Zoom-Mime? The reason is I'm a mime, and most of what we're going to be going over is dealing with the object work and the kind of using this little like square thing, and I haven't rehearsed this quite as much as normal, this square as a stage. This is our proscenium now. So how do we live here? How do we know that this is where we want to be? So there are a couple things that I need to get out of the way before we start moving. And I definitely encourage you, do I have chat? No, that's my comment coming through. I would definitely encourage you to kind of flick back and forth between the camera views here, because what's going to be happening is going to be much like we're going to be dealing with the edges of the stage, and the perspective shift is going to be a big thing. So let's talk about, before we really get moving, let's talk about what's going on here, right? So we, as a live performer, I am very, very used to dealing with um, big open spaces and audiences direct eye contact with my performance. There are a lot of neurological things that your eyes do that your brains do with the information coming from your eyes. That is not the topic we are going to be dealing with today. However, I want to mention that because there are lots of little things like magic tricks where you can distract someone over here while something else is happening here. That stage magic, like I never saw this person enter. You can do that live in video. A lot of that information is not available to you. The different skills are available to you, but not those particular sets of skills. So we have to deal with a different type of audience, right? First things first, I'm looking at a screen right here with you. Now I'm pointing at my nose right now in my screen. You will notice that my finger is not pointing at you as you watch this. It is pointing off and let's see, this to your right because I'm looking at a flip monitor. Brains. So I have to remember that first things first, the viewpoint, if I can see a screen, like my web camera or a phone, which is what I'm currently using, my camera is not what I'm looking at. My camera is here. Those little dots that you can't see very well on the top of your phone or behind your phone or like the top of your laptop. If you look up, you can kind of see in this other camera, like my laptop has a camera at the top there, which is where most of them are. So if you need to make eye contact with someone, you need to look at the camera, not at them on the screen or you at the screen. You have to constantly realize this is a film thing. You have to constantly look at that camera. The second thing you have to realize is that this is not a proscenium. I'm doing you guys a bit of a disservice because I'm using a very nice phone camera, right? And it's not like it's a nice phone. It's just phone cameras are nicer than laptop web cameras. What I mean by that is we, as a live performer, we're used to being like, this is way too close for live performance, right? And I'm out of wall here. But what that does is with distance, we get a flatness to the audience's perspective. When you are on a camera, and in particular web cameras are bad about this, you have some visual distortion. So I can stick my head closer here, and now you get a massively bigger image of my head than it is in real life. If I was doing the same thing and your eye was as close as my camera was, you would have a different experience. And you can tell right now, like I'm looking at the various cameras because I'm trained to look at this other one from the other videos I do. So I'm having trouble like keeping my eyes here and how weird that is. So training yourself, I will sometimes, if I need to remember this, I will put a little Post-it note sticky thing right next to the camera, and that will help me. Keep telling, look at the bright dot. Okay. So you've got this forced perspective. This is worse on laptops because they do some camera effects, fisheyes. You can get into that. I'm not going to. Look it up. Google, YouTube. They are distorting things. So on a laptop that has a really bad fisheye effect, the closer you get, so instead of this being my nose would have been stretched visually to be even wider. That's that weird, like, why is it so big in the camera's eye? Why do I look so weird? That's part of it, is you've got some distortion as you get closer and further away from the camera. So we can play with that a little bit. I'm going to get into that in a bit. The last thing I want to say about camera angles is that, and this is the most important for the mime work that we're going to do, the most important thing is that you're not looking at a straight line. You are no longer in a proscenium arch where you can think, well, I've got to worry about the viewing angles for each individual audience member, but they're the ones with the angles, not me, right? Like moving back and forth is, I'm not very distorted here. This seems like a straight line. However, and like moving directly forward and back, that's a straight line. However, things like this, a straight line, but visually on this camera, I'm not walking towards you. I am walking beside you. And you guys can check in this big camera. You can see that I am walking straight back and forth here in my three-dimensional space, but on this screen, on this camera, I'm passing it, I'm doing this weird, it looks like I'm heading off that direction. So that is a very, very important thing. In particular, if you're a mime and joining me for this, your fixed point will look awful if you're doing lines like this and trying to come towards the camera. It looks like everything's angled. So you've got to figure out how to come towards the camera and whatever that viewing angle is. And remember, it's not your screen, it's your camera. That little lens on the top or whatever you are using. Let's see, did I want to talk about anything else? No. And talking about mime is a great segue because now we get to do stuff. Okay, so all of that is an information dump. We're going to, why am I looking at that camera? I'm looking at this one. Blah! So that was the information dump about the background of what we're dealing with. So let's move into the fun stuff and doing things. So a quick overview of what's going on with mime and what's going on with the techniques. So overview of mime. We're going to go over some very basic things. So mime, at its basic form, is understanding that concept I was talking about, how my three-dimensional space, my room, has a series of dimensions, like up, down, left, right, backwards, and forwards, right? 3 dimensions, three-dimensional space. I also have reference points, forward, back, side to side, up, and down. That is my personal reference of three-dimensional spaces, and that is my room spatial dimension. So those are usually in opposition. We know this because we can do something called fixed point. I'm going to move over here so you don't have the lamp behind me. I'm going to take a fixed point. Just like you just pinch and you imagine there's a tiny little dust mote or something right there in between your fingers. And you are going to glue this in space. You have picked a point in the room and it will not be any different no matter what you do. You've picked a point in the room, not an arm position. Okay, so point in the room is grabbing this and it doesn't move. If I just pick an arm position, I can move around and this point does not get any further away from my face, from my elbow, from my shoulder. All of those reference points maintain the same. I am a static object moving in space in this position. That'll come in later. Or I can keep this point, where it is in the room, and I will have to see how now I've changed the dimensions between this point. My wrist has moved. Like now it is really close to my face. All of these sorts of things have happened because I've kept this point still in the room. If you haven't warmed up, this is gonna, like, you can kind of flex your fingers, shake your hands out. We're gonna be using that and our shoulders a lot, okay? So let's do that real quick. Let's plan it, just pinch a space. You want to keep a zone of control, which is about from your eyes to your shoulders, down to about your sternum, in front of you, and like maybe a hand's width in front of your nose. That's it. So you don't want this to be out in front of you. Okay, you want it to be about here, about where your shoulder is. Okay, that's your zone of control. That's the easiest place to manipulate. So we're just going to play with that for a second. And if you have a camera, or if you're looking at yourself when you try this eventually, I know you're looking at a YouTube video right now, you will notice that some things, even though you will never get perfect at this, so film is just evil for making this work well, you will notice that my body looks a little weird moving around like this. Right? Like, that was a really weird thing to happen. Like, what even happened right there? It's because this camera is messing with your perception of three-dimensional space a little bit. So we just need to make sure, you can pop away from that. We just need to make sure that when we are doing things like this, side to side is going to be a better choice for, get some visual debris out of the way there. Side to side will be a better choice because this is two-dimensional. This, because we are working with depth perception, forward and backward towards someone, towards our viewing angle. This is going to be a little bit weird. It's going to be harder for the camera to pick it up. It's going to be harder for the audience, the viewer, to see what's going on. Two-dimensional up and down is also pretty good, if not better than side to side. Cool. So that's side to side. That's fixed point. You can do that with the other hand just to get a little bit of practice and see what else is going on. When I have done this for online work, practice is huge, especially if you change camera angles. In particular, right now, I'm working with, as you can see in the big camera, I'm working with a phone on a stand so that there's minimal space or minimal things taking up your view of me. Normally I'm at a desk or I'm using a laptop. Any of those things probably keep moving since I was telling you to do that. Cool, pop that out. Those sorts of things will limit your movement and they affect my distance and forward and backward. So in teaching this class, I've practiced a little bit, but I'm now learning a different distance. Like I'm normally not even an arm's reach away from my my camera. I'm normally, sitting, if you can see on this side, the big camera, like typing away. I'm right in front of a laptop. For here, it'd be like, what is this? Here? Yeah, there you go. So I'd be here, right? This would be kind of your classic Zoom window. So I'm having to make some adjustments here. So rehearsal is a huge deal for figuring out what looks good, side to side, up and down, and especially forward and backward. Okay, how are we doing? Yeah, okay. We're gonna move on a little bit. So we talked about referencing the room's three dimensions, and the reference points in the room. Like there's up on this wall, there's down, there's sideways, forward. Walls don't have a lot of front and back. It's kind of their point is to stop you from going one of those directions. But I can reference that, going back and forward. You can also, right, so if I glue in reference to this room, that stays still, or I can move in reference to that. We can do this within our own body. In mine, this is called isolations or translations. We're going to be, for the mime nerds who end up watching this, translations is what we're dealing with. I understand. By the way, if you are not a mime and you're watching this, mimes are nerds and super technical, and they will rake me over the coals if I say the wrong things. Train of thought, jumping tracks. Okay, we can do reference points inside of our own body. So little things like I talked about how if I took this position, like I took a fixed point, but then I didn't move, I kept these distances, right, from my fingers to my shoulder to my nose, like I kept all of that the same. They have stayed static, right, still in reference to my body. So we do this all the time in other ways, and we are also very unconscious about all the times that we don't do it. For example, your head, your eyes, and your ears, your balance wants to maintain level, a horizontal levelness. Levelness? Sure. I had a better word in mind, but whatever. So if you lean to the side, you will notice that you start to do this little number with your head. You're trying to keep your eyes level with the room. It's a very unconscious thing, but it keeps you sane when you're like falling over to look at something. So if you're bending down to get something, you very often do this. When we're typing on a screen, we sit forward, and this would be where we're looking theoretically, but we want to keep our eyes level. So now, if I straighten that up, right, this is not my standing position. I've now changed the relationships of like the back of my head to my shoulders, all that kind of stuff. So let's deal with that a little bit, because there's some fun stuff we can do. We can keep our head and our neck stable, but we can tilt our chest over to his side. So notice that my chin has not changed. We'll do chin and collarbone, like right, like this little meeting point right here. It hasn't moved. Like that. So we call that, we have isolated, we're actually isolating this would be my waist down here. Well, that'd be more chest that I was doing right there. Again, gotta be particular. Cool. So none of this has changed relation. Now this is hard because now you can see my eyes are not level. So this is a trained thing that I have done. I've just practiced this over and over again. Now, you can, knowing that you can tilt things and put them where you want to. You can also do this with not this bottom part. This might be easier to see in the bigger, wide out camera. I can just tilt my chest, right? It doesn't go very far, but I'm not using my belly at all. I can also add my belly. And back up. Let's move up here. We can move just our head in relation. Shoulders didn't move, none of this moved. Small movements. Neck can go and not move in the shoulders. These are our isolations. You can make these, you can mix and match, like I did with my words. You can mix and match what you're doing. So if we isolate a head, we just tilt that a little bit and nothing else, and then we decide, hey, I don't have to move this anymore. I've put it in a position. Now I can maintain this set of references, my head slightly tilted to the right, and tilt my head, or tilt my chest to the other side, to the left. Now this is weird. Now my eyes have gone level again, because I've mixed and matched opposites, a tilt to the right and a tilt to the left, and I've mixed and matched opposites, so now I've got something that does this. I can use those things to move around a static point. Now you kind of have to be, they normally work in pairs like this. That was a weird pair for visualization. They normally work like this. So I can keep all of this the same, tilt and tilt. And now my head is back level, all this maintained, but I've moved my head side to side, which is this number. You can also use those same muscles, but let these move and try to keep this the same. So I'm doing the same thing, but I'm moving my body back and forth at the same time. So now I get this weird. My head's staying still. Look at the right camera here. And my body's moving, so it's this weird effect, which is something that doesn't work terribly well live. Because your eyes do different things when you're live. It does work, but it works great on video. Cool. It makes it a lot more movement, makes it harder to keep that fixed point, as you can kind of tell. So isolations can be a fun thing. You can also use the isolations and sort of referencing where something is in relation to the next body part down, to create interesting postures. If you don't know what to do, like what is my character, you can start to think about, okay, my shoulder's going to go up, my head's going to go away from that shoulder, and then I'm going to drop a hip, right? So now I'm going to keep that, right? This is now a characterization, a posture that I can use as something interesting in a Zoom call, right? Like up close. These are now things that I can keep, that I can now reference and say, like, okay, now I've lost what I'm doing. Oh yeah, let's get that back. So there's a couple examples of ways you can use the mime technique of isolation and translation in order to do funky stuff in here in the Brady Bunch. We've already talked about trapezoid viewing angle. Oh, that's why it's there. Okay. So let's go a step further into our fixed point and use these sort of isolation and fixed point things together. So I talked about how our viewing angle is a trapezoid, right? Which the trapezoid, for the geometrically uninterested, is like a square. However, the sides are tilted. So you've got a smaller one up here, tilted sides, and then a long flat edge on the other side. Kind of triangle, like that. I guess you could call it a triangle, but whatever. We're going out away. So we can use this idea of fixed point, and we're going to add a layer. So instead of thinking, okay, in the big room, right, I've got all these reference points, my three-dimensional space. I've got my personal three-dimensional references, forward, back, up, down, left, right. I also need to add the camera and that camera's reference points. What I mean is now I can say, I can play with, okay, you definitely need a screen to see this, by the way. Wrong direction. See, this is difficult. I can find the edge of my camera's reference points. So my camera has no idea what's on the other side of this screen. That camera does. This one has no idea. So you can kind of see what's going on here, right? You can definitely see it over here. We talked about straight lines before. How in real space, a straight line is a straight line, but here you can also see that my hand does not look like it's going straight. It is. It is going straight from my nose, straight in front of me in my posture. So I've got to find those angles, and this is all twisty wrists. Twisty wrists. So now I've got to figure out what's the reference point here. There you go. Now this looks a little weird with my hands. This hand, with this little thumb waving, you can maybe see it, is much closer. Let's make it even more close. And then this gets hard, because I'm pushing this to an extreme here. There. My hands are different sizes. They're doing the same thing, but they're different sizes. And you can see in the bigger camera, probably, this hand is torturing itself, making this super close. It is really tilted. It's almost flat towards where the camera is angled to. And it's in this weird, it's doing weird things to my visual perspective here. However, I've lost it since I've been talking. There we go. This one is having is much more close to, let's say, perpendicular, straightforward and backward. Over here, this one. And it's much easier to maintain. Missed that a little bit. Yeah, there we go. Don't pull that too far. So little things like having to figure out where and when. Yeah, there we go. Getting that down. Like I said, I'm learning this distance a little bit more. So we can play with these edges now. Now that we can kind of define them. So that was an example. Much harder to get something up close if you were trying to define the vertical edge of your viewing area. Same sort of thing for up, right? So you got to remember, this is not just out, it is also up as well, up and down. So we've got that same angle happening here. So to appear on the screen as if it is flat, right? So this would be my flat hand. However, if I do that here, it doesn't look quite right. I've got to tilt it up, which is now this, right? You can kind of see it on the big one. I put it up on this bottom screen. I gotta do this. Yeah, there we go. This bottom screen, it now looks like my hand is flat, but you can tell in the bigger, wider view that it's not. So we've got this sort of weirdness to figure out. Every time you change your camera angle, it's going to be different. If you're off to the side, it's also going to be different, right? Because now you have to take into account you are looking at the camera, and so that angle has still occurred this direction. Okay, you can't just take this one, where is it? There we go, and move it off to the side. It mostly works, but it may not. So I've got to do a little bit more adjusting right there. Cool. So we can do goof once we've figured all that out, and this takes a lot of work. This takes a lot of just sitting here like, what? Is this right? Cool. No, I moved away. I'm messing with this in here. I'm getting super picky. No daylight, no movement. Boom. You're gonna run into things like this, where as you get closer, you're gonna be pushing your hand in different ways. So you've got to articulate. If you're used to doing this, it's going to feel weird. You're like, I have to retrain a lot of stuff to deal with these weird hand rotations instead of just doing what I normally do to maintain a fixed point. I have to do a lot more internal messing with my elbow, shoulder, and wrist. A lot more articulation. But I keep saying extra things to consider. Once you've got this, you can start playing with fun little things that make this screen a real place for your audience. So it's not just this is your window, this is where I live, right? This is a real place that I can, son of a, mess with. Cool. Let's see. I'm going to take a little water break. We are going to switch to a few exercises after this. I'm going to talk to the big camera. We're going to take a little break. Feel free to throw any questions in. I see possibly one. I'll check the chat for a second. Quick little water break. This is a live class. If you're watching this later, cool. But I figured doing this live is actually going to be more helpful than just giving you recorded a tight production video. Because you can kind of see my process of working through this. So I'm going to take a quick water/coffee break because it's always coffee time. See what's going on in the chat. We'll be back in just a second. You'll be able to see me. I'm not going anywhere. Just grab it. Grabbing coffee. We won't let that camera know what's going on. Coffee for the energy. Water for the voice. Oh, cool. Thanks. Thanks, Claire. I'm glad you think it's cool. Cool. Well, I will. I'll keep going. Again, feel free to drop in comments whenever you see them. So. Which ones do I want to do? Yeah. Okay. So just to, I'm gonna go over a few things you can keep doing in order to, keep working on these things that I've already put out there. We have, just to review, we've done fixed point in space. Also keeping in mind that fixed point in space deals with these camera angles going in and out. We've dealt with lines, so this explicitly calling this out. These are lines right here. This is the last one. I would definitely recommend playing with this idea. So I found what is essentially a fixed point with my hand. And if you want to know any more about the fixed points and all that good stuff, I have other videos on my channel. My movement performance series is currently has my first 2 mime classes on it. And those go into more detail about what fixed point is and kind of all this stuff. So we'll check those out if you are interested in that kind of thing. But I basically found a fixed point with my hand. And then what I do is I sit here and I go, okay, I've figured out what my wrist needs to do to maintain that, what my arm needs to do, my elbow. And then when I deal with a line, I find that. Actually, let me switch sides because that might be blocked by the camera, by my tripod. Okay, we'll do this one. In general, the back is always easier to start with because you have less to do with your wrist here. Boom. There. Cool. Move that up so you can see. So you can see on the main camera that I am kind of touching the edge of the zoom window. But on the larger one, you can see how I am not at all straight. It looks like I'm straight on the camera, but I'm not at all. So dealing with this line now is kind of our main goal. So we find what these are, right? Up and down. I find up a little bit easier to deal with. Also, oh gosh, my hands are backwards on this screen. Dang it. Left and right is awful when that happens. I did some puppetry work, online puppetry work the other day, and deadly if the screen is flipped. There. Cool. A little bit easier there. Here, also not too bad. Oh gosh, flipped hands. I don't know which one to move. There we go. Cool. So finding those lines, finding and just like identifying where those are. Pro tip, I guess, is if you know where you're going to be performing these illusions, find those lines in those spots and mark those spots. Otherwise, you can tell that as I am improvising some of these things, I would definitely need to rehearse these in order to get them super, super clean. And also look at which camera I'm supposed to look at here. Okay, so rehearse, all that good stuff to find where these lines are. We did the isolations of, oh gosh, like keeping one part still. The last thing I'll say about this, an exercise for you to do, is try to figure out, let's do the head is still one, right? Focusing on a point in particular, like your camera or another camera, something will help this work out. Not the other camera. Looking at your camera window will help because I can also do this. This is a great pro tip. If I want to do something like that, I step to the side, and as long as I am looking at the actual camera, not the screen, the camera, I can make this basically work. Even though, you guys can tell over here, I'm at a completely different angle. Gosh. Because I've maintained my focus point and the reference point, that becomes a thing. If I keep my room dimension here and then do this, it's not too bad either. But it's not quite as like, oh wow, that's what's happening is his head is still. So we're kind of dealing with this arc of stuff. Cool. Okay. For the last bit of class and last exercises I want to do, let's talk about how to deal with things that are not on your screen. So we've got all of this option with stuff on your screen, but we haven't dealt with objects or mime illusions or anything like that. So let's deal with that. Again, if you want to deal with objects and illusions, I have some other videos that are going to go more in detail with that. And those are going to be, check those out and then come back and watch this again. So we've got, with Mime, we have the option of doing fun stuff with objects. Because they don't exist, and we can make them go wherever we want in our imagination. There are a couple things you need to know to make this happen, and a couple of modifications for video if you're taking a stage performance version of these and putting them on Zoom. So the idea mainly is focus, right? So I've got a ball here, you can see I am following it with my eyes, and when my eyes are off of it, it's connected to my hand. So there's always some sort of connection to the object. If you let go of an object, it's gone. If I let go of an object, but I keep looking at it, it can stay in place. There are far more abstract versions of this where if you maintain awareness, but not necessarily eye contact, you can keep things realistic. That is way beyond what we're doing today. That's your like intermediate advanced mime class. But it's amazing stuff. I mentioned this because we're going to kind of move into that arena a little bit. So I can deal with this on screen. That's awesome. I maintain the original mime rules when I do this, with a little bit of understanding that doing this messes with perspective of this object, right? I can make this ball bigger, and you guys will notice in the big screen, my hand hasn't changed shape. So being aware that you need to keep things in the basic two-dimensional plane that you start them in order to maintain size is a big deal. You can use that as a way of, right, so if I have this ball and I can go, I can make it much heavier, much more important by bringing it closer, and I was not in camera there. Cool. But what if I want to throw this ball off screen? Well, with our rules, it's gone, except for my eyes. Now, what I need to do is I need to perform the ball's motion, the ball's story, with my eyes, with my body. So if I take this ball and I go, okay, I can identify it. It's here. It's not a bowling ball. It's like a baseball or something. I can chuck it, and I will follow the arc. So the arc would go down, boom. I can just go boom, 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 with my eyes. I need to do that again. I can follow it with my eyes. Boom, 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 boom. I can also do some of that with my body. I can let my body bounce for the ball. Since the ball doesn't have a body, it is the idea of a ball. I can throw the ball. Boom. Just follow it with my eyes a little bit and let my body bounce it out. Telling the story of what's happening off screen with what is on screen is all the audience has to look at. So that if you have something going on over there, unless it's for some sort of effect where you shouldn't know what's going on over there, you need to tell that story with what you have on the screen. I just did, so I've been performing in an online version of Alice in Wonderland. And I was playing the King of Hearts, who is a part of the giant croquet game. And I had the challenge of playing croquet in this environment. So it's Alice in Wonderland, so it's a flamingo for a mallet. The ball is a hedgehog. So it's Alice in Wonderland. It's crazy. So I've got a little bit. I've got my upper body. I've got a bit of my arms here. So I can use some of my mind skills, right? Which is I'm going to let my flamingo, right? I'm going to grab him. You can identify what it is. And when I hit the hedgehog, I can do some talks and stuff. Again, look at my other videos for more what these ideas are. So I can hit it. I can let that affect me. And then exactly what I was just doing with the thrown baseball, I will show you what the hedgehog is doing. With my eyes, with my body. right? Like you can kind of see what's happening to the hedgehog with my body. Yeah. There's lots of little fun, like those translations again, we're bringing those back. The more you can use those, the more you can get into the mime skills and the mime technique, the more exact and clear they can be. You don't need to be a versed mime in order to make this thing happen. You can kind of just do that. Mime helps us break down and understand when it should happen and how much it should happen, and they help you kind of nail in the exact right amount. But the idea is, right, that's basically no mime technique in there. But I can kind of just like float around, but I get the sense that it went somewhere. Whoa. And then if it hits something, that's bad. Right? So we can have this effect on other things, right? I can grab my ball and, ow, oh, right, it's a hedgehog. Okay, it's a real baseball. I can throw it. Oh, I just broke a window, right? If you can think of what it hits and what it does when it hits or contacts something or how it rolls, like if it's rolling through a Rube Goldberg mini golf course, like letting your body be the roller coaster that the ball is going on, following that track, that's going to be something that will read to your audience. If it hits a window, like mine just did, what does a window do when it gets hit? It shatters. So I want to do that kind of crinkly, sharp, kind of shattery motion. Reaction. So you can think of what does it hit. If it hits a solid wall, and then falls down, you have some of that involved. There's a lot of details you can put into that. But living out the story of what happens off to the side. The exercise for you is to do just that. Since I've now described like 4 million scenarios, have a ball, throw that ball, and let it hit something. Or take it on a journey and then hit something. So that's your exercise. If you want, you can also have it follow its track as it rolls back. You can also mess with this. Let me make a harder break. So that's telling the story. Mime is all about telling a story well, and it also has this wonderful ability to break the rules. So we have all these really stringent rules about how objects work, how like lines work, and like how precise you have to be to tell those stories until you want to break the rules. This will be really fun to watch in both cameras. So I can take my ball, I can throw it, and I can go get it. And walk on from the wrong side. You can do fun stuff like that. Like you can obviously see what's going on over there. But you can play with this new environment. Now that you've so well defined where you live and that you are aware of it, almost, I'm getting better. Now you can screw with it, right? Oh. Around the world, bam. Mime does this anyway on stage, but you've got this really wonderful limited window where they literally can't see the space over here or over here, so you can put whatever you want to. Once you get good at following objects off screen, you can I don't know what that even was, but you can follow things. You can start things off screen and bring them on. This is a wonderful way to interact with other people on screen. If you're doing the Brady Bunch thing, or if you have an easier like split screen or whatever that is, if you know what they're doing, if you have a visual on what they're doing, you can play with the objects that are not in your screen. So the analogy would be if you could rip out someone's stage and go put it directly next to another person's stage, and you just like knock down the walls between the audiences, right? So it's one big audience, but the actors can't see each other. The actors know what's going on the other side, but they can't actually switch stages. So just get two big theaters and butt them up right next to each other. If you've ever done the plays, what is it, Home and Garden, I think it is. There are a couple different plays that are meant to be performed simultaneously in two adjacent stages by the same actors. That's pretty much what we're doing. If you're with another person, you don't get to decide what they start, but once it goes off their screen, I'll go back and explain a little bit more of this. You can now control it. So Imaginary Jonathan 1, right, throws a ball off to this side. Nice high arc. Okay, so, hi, I'm Imaginary Jonathan 2. I've watched that arc, and now I can track it through into my screen. And if that was two different images, you would be tracking an object through each other. This requires rehearsal, because like, okay, did I throw it fast off screen? And then if I do that really late, Jonathan 1 goes, bah! And Jonathan 2 is, right? That doesn't match very well. So you would have to match either the float or the catch to match the images. Again, just rehearsal. But you can do some really fun interaction that way. This also would go for passing actual props back and forth. If you have matching props, you can deal with the energy, even if it's just a handoff. So Jonathan 1 here, maybe I have, here, grab my notebook. Okay, so I've got my notebook. I have handed this off to Jonathan number 2. I accept it in the same rhythm. I wouldn't hand it like this and then grab it like rip it out of their hands. That's not what I would do. If you can, matching, like watching the object off your screen is great. Again, that's going to be some tight rehearsal. But you've got all these opportunities to deal with objects off screen and bring their stories into your screen, eliminating these sort of arbitrary window walls. That's a bit of a long discussion. Let me know if you have any questions. I think we're about going to wrap it up there. That is all I had for you today. Yeah. So a couple exercises to try once you're done with this video. A couple exercises to try are, again, fixed point on a screen. Keeping a body part still on screen. You can just do arms, you can do your head. I did my head a lot. Body and not head. Tracking objects off screen, balls that roll, balls that bounce, other things that you can deal with. Again, you can use mime objects. I picked up a notebook by the end, and I screwed up where my edges of my screen were here. But you could see how that, with a little bit more defining where these edges are, how we could really deal with interactions between people based on like understanding the motion and the rhythms of movement that are happening in this invisible space off to either side. Yeah, so thank you guys for watching. Thanks for joining me. If you have any more interest in this, definitely let me know. I'll hang out on chat for a little bit and be kind of monitoring this. Today is June 20th when this goes up. But again, I'm doing more of these. I'll be doing some more movement performance classes with some more various other topics that I'm interested in. if you're interested in ever like learning more about this and maybe getting some more one-on-one, I'm definitely looking at doing that and kind of starting to gauge interest on, hey, is there any interest in doing some one-on-one coaching or like helping people improve this in a setting that's not YouTube? Because obviously we don't have any direct interaction right now. It's very much me telling you things, and you get to do whatever you want. But there's just a lot of information I felt was going to be much better suited to information dump that is YouTube than a straight up Zoom interactive class. Definitely looking at doing that in the future. Tech is always interesting. If you're interested, actually, that was my other thing. If you're interested in learning how all this happens, because I did not live stream before the shutdowns. I did not live stream before the pandemic at all. I learned from some friends that have been working on this and discovering things through trial and error. I am not a production studio, so you are looking at a camera, a phone, a laptop, and then I have like an actual desktop in the corner, none of which is supposed to work together. So if you have any interest in kind of learning, like, okay, what have your experiences been doing this? I'm totally open to kind of sharing some of that. It's always a little bit harder to prep showing any of that because I'm usually using the tech, and you can't like watch the tech with the tech that you're using. But yeah, so definitely let me know if you have anything that comes up because of this, any interest in other topics. Definitely looking to see what people are interested in, what they're looking at. And I've talked long enough, so that's going to be it for this video. That was an intro to Zoom-Mime that you can do to impress your friends. Next time you have a really annoying Zoom call, or it's like an extra step of stuff that you can do when you're performing online. Like I'm going to be doing some online fringe festivals in the near future, looking at building out some of this stuff. So there's going to be a lot of opportunity for this to grow. I will definitely learn some more. I will definitely grow and come up with more principles that I would love to share with you. So we're just going to call it there. Thank you again so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video. Appreciate it.